When I was 26, I rented a basement room in Brampton. It was cheap, close to work, and the landlord seemed nice enough. The house belonged to a middle-aged couple who lived upstairs. They rented out 3 basement rooms to single guys like me. My room was small but clean. There was a shared kitchen, 1 bathroom, and a separate entrance through the side gate. The other 2 tenants were quiet. One was a student named Arjun. He mostly stayed in his room with headphones on. The other was a man named Naveen. Naveen was probably in his 40s. He worked nights, or at least that's what he told everyone. I rarely saw him during the day. He was polite when we crossed paths, but something about him made me uncomfortable. He never looked directly at your face. He looked slightly past you, like he was watching something behind you. At first, I thought I was being judgmental. Then little things started happening. Food went missing from the fridge. Not full meals. Small things. 1 egg. Half a roti. A spoonful of curry from a container. Then my laundry started smelling strange, like someone had touched it with dirty hands. One night, I woke up around 3 a.m. needing water. When I opened my door, I saw Naveen standing in the hallway. Just standing there. No shoes. No jacket. No phone. He was facing Arjun's door. I said, "You okay?" He slowly turned his head. Then he smiled and said, "Bathroom." But the bathroom was in the opposite direction. After that, I started locking my door even when I was inside. A week later, Arjun moved out suddenly. He didn't say goodbye. He just packed everything one afternoon and left. I asked the landlord what happened, and she said he had family reasons. That night, I noticed something odd. Naveen's room was beside mine. The wall between us was thin. Usually, I could hear him coughing or moving around. But after Arjun left, I started hearing whispering. Not phone calls. Whispering. It sounded like Naveen talking to himself. Sometimes he laughed quietly. Sometimes he said words I couldn't understand. One night, I put my ear near the wall. I heard him say my name. My full name. I stepped back so fast I hit my bed frame. The next morning, I told the landlord. She looked uncomfortable but brushed it off. He is strange, but he pays rent on time. That sentence stayed with me. He pays rent on time. As if that explained everything. A few days later, I came home from work and found my door slightly open. I knew I had locked it. Inside, nothing looked stolen. My laptop was there. My wallet was there. But things were moved. My pillow was on the floor. My closet door was open. And on my bed, placed neatly in the center, was a small plastic bag. Inside the bag was a folded piece of paper. I opened it. It was a printed photo of me, sleeping, taken from inside my room. I couldn't breathe for a few seconds. I grabbed my phone and went upstairs to the landlord. Her husband came down with me. We knocked on Naveen's door. No answer. The landlord opened it with her spare key. The room was empty. Not empty like someone had moved out. Empty like someone had never really lived there. No bed sheets. No clothes in the closet. No toiletries. But the walls were covered. Photos. Dozens of them. Photos of me entering the basement. Photos of Arjun cooking. Photos of the landlord's wife in the backyard. Photos taken through windows, through door gaps, from behind parked cars. Some were printed. Some were cut into pieces. On one wall, there were names written with dates beside them. Mine was there. Arjun's was there. And 5 other names I didn't recognize. The landlord called the police. While we waited, I noticed something under Naveen's mattress. A small black device. Camera. Then we found another one hidden inside the smoke detector in the hallway. Another in the kitchen. Another pointed toward the bathroom door. The police came, took statements, and collected everything. They asked the landlord for his ID records. That's when we learned the worst part. The ID Naveen had given was fake. His phone number was fake. The job he claimed to have didn't exist. No one knew who he really was. I moved out that same night and stayed with a friend. A week later, Arjun called me. I don't know how he got my number. Maybe from the landlord. He asked if something happened. I told him about the photos. He went quiet. Then he said, I knew he was coming into my room. I asked why he didn't say anything. He said, because one night I woke up and he was standing beside my bed. I didn't know what to say. Then Arjun said something that still bothers me. He wasn't just looking at me. He was crying. The police never found Naveen. At least no one told me they did. For months after that, I had trouble sleeping. Every small noise woke me up. Every shadow under the door looked like feet. But the thing that scared me most wasn't the cameras. It wasn't the photos. It was the fact that he had lived beside me for weeks, pretending to be just another quiet tenant. This happened when I was driving from Calgary to Winnipeg for work. I had planned the trip badly. I left too late, drank too much coffee, and convinced myself I could drive farther than I should have. By the time I crossed into Saskatchewan, I was exhausted. It was almost midnight when I saw a small motel sign glowing beside the highway. It wasn't part of a big chain, just one of those old roadside motels with 10 or 12 rooms, a gravel parking lot, and a flickering sign that said vacancy. I didn't care how it looked. I just needed sleep. The office was still open. An older man sat behind the counter watching a small TV with the volume low. He didn't smile when I walked in. One night? He asked. Yeah. He handed me a key attached to a plastic tag. Room 6. I paid, thanked him, and drove around to the row of rooms. The motel was almost empty. Only 2 other cars were parked there. One old pickup near room 2, and a white van at the far end, near room 10. Room 6 was in the middle. Inside, the room smelled like old carpet and cleaning spray. The furniture was outdated, but the bed looked clean enough. I locked the door, checked the bathroom, closed the curtains, and lay down. I don't know how long I slept. Maybe an hour, maybe less. I woke up because of tapping. 3 soft taps. Not at the door. At the window. I stayed still for a moment, half asleep, trying to understand what I'd heard. Then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. I sat up. The curtains were closed, but there was a small gap where they didn't meet fully. Through that gap, I could see darkness outside and a thin strip of parking lot light. Then something moved across the gap. A face. I froze. It was a woman standing outside my window. She was very close to the glass, so close that her breath fogged a small patch near her mouth. She looked maybe 30. Her hair was messy and damp, and she wore a light jacket even though it was freezing outside. She tapped again. Then she whispered, "Please." I didn't move. She tapped harder. "Please help me." My first thought was that she was in danger. My second thought was that something was wrong, because she wasn't looking behind her. She wasn't panicking. She wasn't crying. She was staring directly through the gap in the curtains like she knew exactly where my face was. I got out of bed carefully and stood away from the window. "What's wrong?" I asked. She leaned closer to the glass. "Open the door." "What happened?" "Please open the door." Her voice was flat. Not scared. Not begging. Just repeating the words. I walked to the door but didn't open it. I looked through the peephole. No one was there. She was still at the window. I said louder, "Go to the office. The manager is there." She didn't answer. Then she stopped tapping. For a few seconds, everything was silent. Then my door handle moved. Slowly. Down. Down again. Someone was standing at my door. But through the peephole I couldn't see anyone. That meant whoever it was knew how to stay low or to the side. My mouth went dry. The woman at the window whispered, "He's going to hurt me." But her face didn't show fear. The door handle moved again. I grabbed my phone and called the front desk. The old man answered after 6 rings. "Office. There's a woman outside my window and someone at my door," I whispered. Silence. Then he said, "Don't open it." The way he said it made me even more scared. "You know her?" He didn't answer. Instead, he said, "Stay in the room. I'm coming." A few seconds later, I heard movement outside. Footsteps on gravel. Then a man's voice, low and angry. "Come on." The woman stepped away from the window. I saw her shadow move past the curtain gap. Then I heard the old motel owner shout, "Get out of here!" There was a short argument outside. I couldn't make out the words. A car door slammed. An engine started. Then silence. A minute later, the motel owner knocked on my door. Open up. It's me. I looked through the peephole first. It was him. I opened the door but kept the chain on. He looked tired and angry. You okay? He asked. Who was that? He rubbed his face. They've done this before. Who? He looked toward the far end of the motel, where the white van had been parked. It was gone. He said, couple. Sometimes they use a woman. Sometimes a young guy. They get travelers to open the door. Then the other one rushes in. My legs felt weak. Why didn't you warn me? He looked ashamed. They checked in after you. Paid cash. I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the bed with the lights on until sunrise. In the morning, I packed quickly and went to return the key. The motel owner gave me coffee and apologized again. Before I left, I noticed something scratched into the wooden windowsill outside my room. Small marks. Not random. Tallies. There were 7 of them. I asked the owner about it. He looked at the marks, then looked away. Some people leave scratches, he said. But I knew that wasn't true. Those marks were made by someone standing outside that window. Waiting. Counting. I still travel for work sometimes, but I don't stay at roadside motels anymore. And if someone ever knocks on your window at night instead of going to the office, remember this. Fear does not always sound like screaming. Sometimes it sounds like a calm voice saying, please open the door. I worked as a cleaner in an office building downtown for almost a year. It was boring work, but peaceful. I came in after most employees had left, cleaned washrooms, emptied bins, vacuumed floors, and locked up certain areas. The building had 12 floors, but only 6 were occupied. The upper floors were under renovation and mostly empty. My shift started at 10 p.m. and ended at 4 a.m. There was a security guard in the lobby named Malcolm. Older guy. Friendly. He usually watched movies on his phone and checked cameras. The rule was simple. I cleaned floors 2 to 6. I was not supposed to go above 6 unless management asked. One night, around 1:15 a.m., I was cleaning the 4th floor washroom when my radio crackled. It was Malcolm. Are you on 7? I picked up the radio. No. 4th. There was a pause. You sure? Yeah. Another pause. Okay. I didn't think much of it. 10 minutes later, the radio crackled again. Come down when you can. His voice sounded different. Tight. I took the elevator to the lobby. Malcolm was standing behind the security desk, staring at the camera monitor. What's up? I asked. He pointed at one screen. It showed the 7th floor hallway. Someone was standing there. A man. He was far from the camera, near the elevator doors. The image was grainy, but I could tell he was wearing dark clothes and a baseball cap. Contractor? I asked. Malcolm shook his head. No one signed in. Maybe someone stayed late? No offices up there. We watched the screen. The man didn't move. Then he lifted his head and looked directly at the camera. Malcolm picked up the phone and called building maintenance. No answer. Then he called the police non-emergency line. While he was talking, the man on the camera walked out of frame. Malcolm checked the other cameras. Nothing. Then the elevator behind us dinged. Both of us turned. The doors opened. Empty. The elevator had come down from the 7th floor. Malcolm stepped toward it, then stopped. Inside the elevator, all the floor buttons were unlit except one. The basement. Someone had pressed it. The doors started closing. Malcolm held them open with his hand. He looked at me and said, "Stay here." I said, "No, don't go alone." He hesitated. Then we both got in. I don't know why. Looking back, it was stupid. We should have waited. But when you're in a building, you convince yourself nothing truly bad can happen there. The elevator went down. When the doors opened to the basement, the air felt colder. The basement was mostly storage, electrical rooms, and old furniture. The lights were motion activated, but only some worked properly. We stepped out. Malcolm had a flashlight. "Hello?" he called. No answer. We walked past stacked chairs, boxes of old files, and a row of vending machines that had been unplugged years ago. Then we heard it. A phone ringing. Not loud. Muffled. Like it was inside something. We followed the sound to a storage room. The door was slightly open. Malcolm pushed it with his foot. Inside, there were cleaning supplies, paint cans, and a large old filing cabinet. The ringing was coming from the cabinet. Malcolm opened the top drawer. There was a phone inside. It was mine. I checked my pockets. My phone was gone. I had no memory of losing it. On the screen, an unknown number was calling. Malcolm looked at me. "Don't answer it." The call ended. Then a text came in. "Come upstairs." My body went cold. Malcolm said, "We're leaving." We turned around. At the end of the basement hallway, near the elevator, someone stepped into view. The man from the camera. He stood between us and the elevator. Malcolm raised his flashlight. "Hey, you need to leave." The man didn't move. Then he slowly reached up and removed his baseball cap. Under it, his face looked wrong in the dim light. Not deformed. Just empty. No expression. No fear. No surprise. Like being caught meant nothing to him. He took one step toward us. Malcolm grabbed my arm and pulled me into the storage room. He shut the door and locked it from inside. The handle moved almost immediately. Once. Twice. Then it stopped. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then the man spoke. "I know there are two of you." His voice was calm. Malcolm whispered, "Back wall." There was another door at the back of the storage room that led into the maintenance corridor. We moved quietly, stepping around boxes. The front door handle started shaking violently. We slipped out the back and ran through the maintenance corridor. Behind us, we heard the storage room door slam open. We reached the stairwell and climbed to the lobby. Malcolm locked the basement door behind us and called 911. The police arrived fast. They searched the basement, the upper floors, the stairwells, everything. They didn't find him, but they found how he got in. One of the renovation crews had left a service door unsecured on the 7th floor, accessible from scaffolding outside. The man had entered the building hours earlier and had been moving between empty floors. They also found something else. In an unused room on the 7th floor, there was a pile of items. A woman's scarf, 2 employee ID cards, a set of keys, a half-eaten sandwich from the staff fridge, and my cleaning cart. He had gone through my cart, taken my phone, and somehow returned to the 7th floor without me seeing him. The police said he was probably homeless or mentally unstable. Maybe, but that didn't explain the text. "Come upstairs." He knew exactly how to scare us. A month later, I quit that job. Before I left, Malcolm told me something he hadn't mentioned before. The first time he saw the man on camera, the man wasn't standing near the elevator. He was standing outside the 4th floor washroom, the same washroom I had been cleaning. And according to Malcolm, he had stood there for almost 3 minutes before walking away. I never worked alone at night again. When I was 19, my uncle asked me to help him clean out an old rental house he had bought. The previous owner had died, and the house had been empty for nearly a year. My uncle planned to renovate it and rent it out. He offered me $200 for the day. I said yes. The house was in an older neighborhood, the kind with cracked sidewalks, huge trees, and homes that looked quiet even in daylight. It had 2 floors, a basement, and a detached garage. When we arrived, the place looked neglected but not abandoned. The lawn was overgrown. The paint was peeling. But the windows were intact, and the doors were locked. Inside, the air smelled stale. My uncle opened windows while I started carrying old furniture to the garage. Most of the house was normal. Dusty, ugly, outdated but normal. Except for one room upstairs. At the end of the hallway, there was a bedroom door with a deadbolt on the outside. Not inside. Outside. That alone made me uncomfortable. I asked my uncle about it. He shrugged. Maybe they kept valuables in there. He tried the key ring the realtor had given him. None of the keys worked. "We'll deal with it later," he said. For most of the day, we cleaned. Around 4 p.m., my uncle left to pick up supplies. He said he'd be back in 20 minutes. I stayed behind and continued clearing the kitchen. That's when I heard something upstairs. A soft thump. I froze. Old houses make noise, so I told myself it was nothing. Then it happened again. Thump. From upstairs. From the hallway. I picked up a hammer from the counter and walked slowly to the stairs. "Hello," I called. No answer. I climbed halfway up. The hallway was empty, but the locked bedroom door was slightly open. I knew it had been closed. I stood there for a long moment listening. Then the door moved. Just a little, like someone inside had touched it. I went back downstairs immediately and called my uncle. He didn't answer. I called again. No answer. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow. Bare feet or socks. Not loud enough to be heavy boots. I left the house and stood on the front lawn, holding the hammer like an idiot. My uncle's truck pulled up about 10 minutes later. He laughed when he saw my face. "What happened?" I told him. He stopped laughing. We went inside together. The locked room door was closed again. My uncle tried the handle. Locked. He looked at me. "You sure it was open?" "Yes." He didn't argue. He went to his truck, got a crowbar and forced the deadbolt. The door opened with a hard crack. Inside, the room was almost empty. No bed, no dresser, no boxes, but the walls were covered in writing. Not graffiti. Writing. Names, dates, phone numbers, addresses. Some were written in marker, some scratched into the drywall. There were also photographs taped to one wall. Old photos of people walking outside the house. A mailman, a woman with groceries, kids riding bikes, a man mowing his lawn. Near the closet, there was a mattress on the floor. Dirty blankets, empty water bottles, food wrappers. Someone had been living in that locked room. Maybe recently. My uncle cursed and pulled out his phone to call the police. While he was talking, I noticed the closet door. It was closed, but there was a gap at the bottom. And through that gap, I saw something move. A foot. I grabbed my uncle's arm and pointed. He stopped talking. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then the closet door opened. A man stepped out. He was thin, with a gray beard and sunken eyes. He wore an old hoodie and jeans that looked too big for him. He didn't look surprised to see us. He looked annoyed, like we had entered his room without permission. My uncle shouted, "Get out!" The man didn't move. Instead, he looked at me and said, "You came alone first." My whole body went cold. That meant he had been inside the room earlier, watching me, listening. My uncle pulled me back toward the hallway. The man took one step forward, then another. My uncle raised the crowbar and yelled louder than I had ever heard him yell. The man stopped. For a second, I thought he might attack. Then he smiled. He said, "There are other rooms." And he ran. Not toward us. Toward the window. He threw it open, climbed out onto the small roof above the porch and jumped down. By the time we got outside, he was gone. The police came and searched the house. They found signs that he had been entering through a loose basement window. The locked bedroom had probably been his hiding place long before my uncle bought the house. But that wasn't the worst part. In the basement, behind an old furnace panel, they found a small opening. It led into a crawl space under the stairs. Inside were more blankets, more food wrappers, and a notebook. The police wouldn't let us read it, but one officer accidentally left it open for a few seconds while bagging it. I saw one page. It had dates and times written in neat columns. Besides some dates, it said things like, "Woman alone, 9:10 p.m., boy in kitchen, 6:45, owner asleep, door open." I realized then that he hadn't just been hiding in the house. He had been watching everyone who lived there. For how long, I don't know. My uncle sold the house instead of renovating it. A few months later, I drove past it. A new family had moved in. There were toys in the yard and curtains in the windows. I wanted to stop and warn them, but I didn't, because what would I even say? Check your walls. Look inside every closet. Make sure the empty rooms are actually empty. I still think about what that man said. There are other rooms. And every time I enter a new house, hotel, basement or rental, I check every door, even the locked ones. I used to drive rideshare full-time in Edmonton. Most nights were normal. Drunk people, tired workers, airport trips, couples arguing in the back seat like I wasn't there. After a while, you stop reacting to things. You just drive, keep your rating up, and go home. But there was one night that changed how I looked at every passenger after that. It was a Thursday in late November. Cold, dark, the kind of night where the roads looked empty even though the city was still awake. It was around 1:40 in the morning, and I was near White Avenue, waiting for one last ride before going home. A request came in. The pickup was outside an apartment building near an older residential area. The destination was only about 12 minutes away. Easy ride. I accepted. As soon as I turned onto the street, the passenger canceled. That happens sometimes. People change their minds. I didn't think much of it. Then, not even 10 seconds later, the same request came back. Same pickup. Same destination. I accepted again. Canceled again. This happened 3 times. By the 4th request, I was annoyed, but I accepted because it was slow and I wanted the fare. This time, they didn't cancel. I pulled up outside the apartment building. It was one of those older low-rise buildings with yellow hallway lights and balconies stacked like old boxes. The pickup pin showed the passenger should be standing right outside. No one was there. I waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Then I got a message. Come to the back. I looked at the building. There was a narrow alley along the side, dark except for a small light above a back door. I replied, please come to the front. A few seconds later, another message came. Can't. Hurt my leg. That made me uncomfortable. I had helped passengers before. Elderly people, drunk people, people with groceries. But something about this was off. Maybe because he had canceled so many times. Maybe because the alley looked too dark. I typed, I can wait at the front. No reply. The timer was still running. I was about to cancel and leave when I saw someone step out from the side of the building. A man. He was tall, wearing a black winter jacket with the hood pulled tight around his face. He had one hand in his pocket and the other holding his phone. He didn't limp. He walked normally. That was the first thing I noticed. He came to the passenger side rear door and just stood there for a moment, looking inside the car. I unlocked the doors. He didn't get in. Instead, he leaned down slightly and said through the closed window, can you open the trunk? I rolled the window down just a little. For what? My bag. What bag? He turned his head toward the alley. In the back. I felt my stomach tighten. Sorry, I said. You'll need to bring it here. He didn't answer right away. Then he smiled. Not a friendly smile. More like he was amused. He said, it's heavy. I looked past him toward the alley. I couldn't see anything clearly, but I had the feeling someone else was standing near the back door. Maybe it was just shadow. Maybe not. I said, I can't leave the car running. He stared at me. Then he pulled on the rear door handle. It opened. I had unlocked it. He slowly sat in the back seat, behind the passenger side. I immediately hated that position because I couldn't see him properly in the mirror. The smell hit me first. Not alcohol. Not weed. Something metallic and dirty, like wet coins and old clothes. I asked, where are we going? He said nothing. The app already had the destination, but I asked again, mostly to hear his voice. He finally said, just drive. I started driving. For the first minute, he was quiet. Too quiet. Most people look at their phone or shift around or breathe heavily in the cold. He just sat completely still. Then he asked, do you always refuse to help people? I looked at him in the mirror. What do you mean? My bag. I told you, you can bring it to the car. He leaned forward slightly. You were scared. I didn't answer. He said, smart. That one word made my hands tighten on the steering wheel. At the next red light, I checked the mirror again. His hood had fallen back a little, and I could see part of his face. He looked maybe late 30s, pale, thin. His eyes were wide open, but not in a tired way. More like he hadn't blinked for a long time. He was looking at the back of my head. The destination was coming up, but it was showing as a side street near an industrial area. Not a house. Not an apartment. I asked, "Is this the right address?" He said, "Keep going. The app says the destination is coming up. Keep going." I didn't like his tone. I said, "You'll need to update the trip." He leaned forward more. I said, "Keep going." At that exact moment, the light turned green. Instead of going straight, I turned right into a gas station. He immediately said, "What are you doing?" I pulled up near the front doors where the store lights were bright. "Just checking the destination," I said. He didn't move. I put the car in park. Then I noticed something in the rearview mirror that made my chest go cold. His hand was no longer empty. He had something dark in it. I couldn't tell if it was a knife, a tool, or something else, but he was holding it low beside his leg. I opened my door and stepped out fast. He said, "Where are you going?" I didn't answer. I walked straight toward the gas station door. The clerk inside looked up at me. I turned back. The man was still sitting in my car. Then he slowly got out. For a second, I thought he was going to follow me inside. Instead, he shut the door gently, almost politely, and walked away across the parking lot. Not toward the destination. Not back toward the apartment. Just away. I stood inside the gas station for maybe 10 minutes before I went back to my car. The clerk asked if everything was okay. And I said yes because I didn't know what else to say. The back seat smelled terrible. I checked the floor. There was a small brown stain on the mat behind the passenger seat. I canceled the ride and reported the passenger. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the alley, the bag, the person I thought I saw standing near the back door. The next morning, curiosity got the better of me. I drove back to that apartment building during the day. The alley looked less scary in daylight, but it still felt wrong. Near the back door, there was a dumpster and a small patch of snow that had been disturbed. I don't know why, but I walked over and looked behind the dumpster. There was nothing there, but the snow had a long drag mark leading toward the alley entrance. A few days later, I saw a local news post about a woman who had gone missing from that same neighborhood. She had last been seen leaving a friend's apartment late at night. I'm not saying it was connected. I can't prove anything. But when I saw her photo, I realized something that made me feel sick. Her apartment building was the one I had picked him up from. And the man's destination that night? It was not a home. It was a road behind an abandoned warehouse. I stopped driving nights after that. People think the scariest part of rideshare is picking up drunk passengers or getting robbed. It isn't. The scariest part is realizing that sometimes you are not the driver. Sometimes you are almost the delivery.